If I ignore the sweat in my raincoat and the piss water in my shoes, then riding in the rain is one of the most fun things that I've ever done on two wheels. But we've all got people in our lives who tell us, बारिश में bike मत चला, लोग गिर जाते हैं. And I won't lie to you, that's a totally valid concern. Log girte hain. But there's also plenty that you can do as a rider to prevent sliding around in the rain. Whether you're a total beginner or an intermediate rider, I think there will be something for everyone to take away from this video. Because while some of us are aware of these things on a deep down and subconscious level, there is still a need for you to make an active effort to implement these things on everyday rides. I'm actually making this because I've seen friends, family and strangers on the street take a tumble because they didn't know how to properly adapt their riding style to the weather conditions. Of course, none of the techniques in this video will 100% guarantee a safe ride, but learning these skills is your best chance of maximizing that probability. And for that, the first most important thing that you should understand is the change in visibility. During heavy rains, the environment gets dark, there's water on your visor, water on your mirrors, and the rain can get loud enough to overpower some crucial sounds on the road, making you less aware of everything that is going on around you. In conditions like this, it is essential to recalibrate your expectations of everyone else on the road. And this is because you are almost invisible to the vehicles that you are driving behind. If you see from the perspective of a car driver, a relatively small object like a motorcycle gets completely blurred out because of the water droplets on their windows and mirrors. Whenever I drive a car, I always assume that there's a biker in my blind spot and indicate for a very generous amount of time before making any lane changes. But trust me, 99% of drivers on the road are not going to be as courteous as I am. You need to turn on your headlights to at least have a chance of the car and truck drivers noticing you. In normal conditions, your tire noise and the hum of your exhaust can let other drivers know that you're approaching to overtake them, but they can't hear shit in the rain because of how loudly the raindrops hit their metal roofs. So don't hold back on using your horn and let people know where you are positioned in traffic around them. Speaking of positioning yourself in traffic, look at this beautiful blind spot diagram over here and tell me, what is the worst place for a biker to be around a car? In any condition, actually, not just the rain. Some of you might have answered this, or maybe this is the worst place to be around a car because you're dead in the blind spot, right? This is the worst place that you can possibly be at. You will have no idea of what's going on in traffic just one car ahead of you, so it delays your reaction time by a lot. Especially if the car in front of you panic brakes in an emergency. And in this emergency, you will have no other option but to slam your brakes as well and hope for the best. Because if you suddenly swerve into another lane, you run the risk of random vehicles crashing into you at God knows what speed. And it could turn into a much bigger accident. Secondly, the car in front of you will not slow down if it's going over a pothole from between its wheels. It's gonna catch you by surprise at the very last moment. Whenever on a bike, this is the spot where I feel the most comfortable. From here, it's very easy for the car driver to notice me, and I can also see far into the distance and plan my reactions well in advance. Plus, in an emergency, I have a very straightforward and easy escape route. There's one downside of being here though, I am directly in the splash zone. So whenever this car goes through a puddle, it will throw water straight at me. But I think that's a reasonable trade-off because you're riding in the rain anyway, right? Now coming to the skills that you should learn. First and foremost, be gentle with the inputs. Smooth acceleration, progressive braking, and controlled cornering. And for the most part, all of these inputs should be sequential and not simultaneous. What I mean is that you should not accelerate while turning and neither should you try to turn while braking. Rashly doing two of these things at the same time will almost certainly end with tetanus shots and insurance claims. For example, during panic braking situations, your first human instinct is to slam the brakes and turn the bike away from the obstacle all at the same time. But this will completely mess up the mechanics of how your bike is designed to stop. You will end up in a high side or low side situation where you will slide across the street and hit that obstacle anyway. So try to keep the bike in a straight line when you brake, or try to steer the bike away if you think that you cannot stop fast enough. And maybe the reason why you couldn't stop fast enough is because you are too scared of using the front brake. Chances are that the person who taught you how to ride a motorcycle told you horror stories about using the front brake in the rain. But I promise you, this will completely change how you ride your bike for the better. See, our intention while braking isn't to maximize the force between the brake pads and the disc, but But our goal is to make the best use of the friction that is between the road and the tires. Friction is a function of your tire's coefficient of friction and the normal force that is acting on that tire. In simple words, friction depends on the stickiness of your tires and the weight which is applied on those tires. Now, in a normal case, when the bike is moving at a constant speed, the front and rear tire will ideally share 50-50 of the bike and rider's weight. When you accelerate hard, some of this weight transfers to the back, giving you more grip on the rear wheel and helping you accelerate even faster. The exact opposite happens when you use the front brake. The weight transfers to the front, increases the friction on the front wheel and helps you stop faster. Now, when you only use the rear brake, you are pretty much going against the laws of physics. There's a slight weight transfer to the front wheel because of how your body reacts to inertia. So now you end up using less than half the grip that is actually at your disposal. This means that your bike will stop at a much slower rate than it is capable of, and the chances of your rear tire slipping also increase. If we look at a textbook perfect scenario of braking as hard as possible, it will look something like a pre-stoppie, if that's a real thing. Like just before the rear wheel starts to lift in the air and the front tire is loaded with maximum weight. And at this same moment, the rear tire is also being slowed by engine braking. This requires a lot of skill and practice, and it might not even be safe to do this in the real world. So what I'm asking you to do is use 70% front and 30% rear brakes at the same time to slow your bike down. Even better if you can use engine braking along with the friction brakes. There's plenty of tutorials on YouTube, so I won't sit here and teach you how to do it, but I will tell you what it is and the two places where it comes in super handy. Engine braking is achieved by a process called rev matching, and it has to be one of the coolest, most fun skills to learn. But if you haven't experienced it yet, I think the best way that I can describe it to you is with a pull-up analogy. For a minute, imagine that stopping your bike with brakes is like doing a pull-up. Now, if you stop your bike with the brakes and the engine, it is like doing an assisted pull-up with a resistance band. When you rev match and downshift, your engine is at a high RPM and acts like a completely stretched resistance band that is trying to come back to an unstretched position. Now, when you use the friction brakes while the engine is in this state, your bike will stop faster than ever before. An extension of this skill is cornering. I've seen a lot of accidents where the riders go through a corner at very low RPMs or with the clutch completely pulled in. When they do that, they are letting the inertia of the bike carry them straight, and the tires are burdened with the task of fighting that inertia in order to turn and get through the corner safely. What you should do instead is rev match to shift a gear or two down as you approach a corner and get the engine to a mid to high RPM. This will make sure that your bike's momentum is dictated more by the engine, which you can control, and less by inertia that you can't control. It will also increase the gyroscopic forces that your engine is producing so that it's easier for you to maintain a lean angle. Another advantage of being at high RPMs in a corner is that you can modulate the speed both up and down with just the throttle inputs. No need to risk using friction brakes when you are leaned over. Okay, now you know how to slow down. But do you really know when to slow down? There are two common obstacles that you will encounter in the rain. Obstacle 1, a little bit funny, but it's paint. When you're going over painted surfaces on the road, you should simply avoid changing the momentum of your bike. Try to maintain a constant speed over these as far as possible because they can get super slippery when they're wet. This also applies to metal manhole covers, by the way. Obstacle 2, potholes. Never, I mean never brake aggressively into a pothole. Remember how I explained earlier that your bike's weight is shifting towards the front when you brake? What happens is that your front suspension compresses a lot. If you go into a pothole with this fully compressed suspension, you and your bike are going to get completely shaken up because you are not giving your suspension the chance to absorb any of this shock. You could lose your balance and fall, or you could crack a wheel and then fall. Instead, you should do one of these three things. Option A, you could simply go around a pothole if you have a chance, or if there isn't an opportunity to do that, then option B is to slow your bike down as much as possible until you're around 5 to 10 meters away from this pothole. At which point you want to accelerate just a little bit to decompress your suspension before you go through this pothole. And option C, if you saw this pothole really late, just saddle it out. Stand up on the foot pegs and you will see how your bike naturally levels off. This happens because when you're seated on the bike, you create what we call the rider's triangle. The handlebars, the seat, and the foot pegs. And triangles are known to be the strongest shape. This rider's triangle makes it very difficult for the bike to pivot, so if you hit a pothole, it will affect the rider a lot. The handlebar can slip out of your hand or you can get violently launched towards the moon. But when you stand up, you basically take away one of these points. Now the bike can pivot freely without having much of an effect on the rider. By this point in the video, you've got the technique down, you know the things to look out for, but you also need 3 basic items to support your cause. 1 good helmet and 2 good tires. It is very easy for a cheap helmet to fog up and turn you into a blind man on a motorcycle. So just upgrade your helmet to something with a built-in pin lock or buy an anti-fog insert or anti-fog spray for your existing helmet. And most importantly, check your tires. If necessary, get fresh ones at the start of the season itself. The grooves in your tires are essential to channel the water out from under the tire and prevent hydroplaning. Hydroplaning is basically when a thin layer of water gets trapped between the road and tire, essentially turning you into biker Jesus for like 2 seconds until you slip and crash. And yes, it will be a miracle if you come back to life 3 days later. Speaking of miracles, I have a sponsor in this video. Riding in the rain teaches you to appreciate the beauty of nature even when it's pouring. And if you're someone who loves getting closer to nature, then let me tell you about Tulsigad. Located in Murbad, which is just a 2-hour ride from Mumbai, this hidden gem offers agricultural land, NA plots and tailor-made bungalows to suit your exact needs. It is the perfect place to park your bike after a long ride and soak in the lush green surroundings. With newly built roads and an upcoming railway station, connectivity to Murbad has never been better. Plus, with a proposed government medical college right next to Tulsigad, this area is primed for rapid growth, making it an ideal investment. Scan this QR code or click the link in the description to talk to them directly and start planning your dream escape today. Thank you so much for watching. Share this video so it can help your buddies, like it so YouTube shows it to more people, and subscribe so I can become an egomaniac YouTuber who will get cancelled in 4 years.